I didn't kill just one Husnock or 100 or 1,000. I killed them all.
When elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. A topic that I don't think has ever really been discussed is the politics of the godlike entities in Star Trek. We see quite a few of them throughout the different series, but no one has ever really analyzed their role in the universe itself. Did these beings exist long before younger species, remnants of an earlier era now fading into obscurity, or are they islands unto themselves, entirely separate from one another, ruling their own little domains without ever interacting? What if the truth is something more complex? What if, in Star Trek, gods are not simply omnipotent, but political entities, bound by rivalries, philosophies, and hidden struggles that shape the mortal realm? Let's just get into it.
We'll just have to do the best we can without you.
What justifies that smugness?
Not smugness, not arrogance. But we're resolute, we're determined, and your help is not required.
Everything we see in Star Trek is from the point of view of mortals, and that severely limits our understanding of these godlike beings. But one thing is clear. They do interact with lesser species, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. The real question is, are these interactions part of careful, calculated agreements where a powder keg of godly conflict could explode at any moment, or are these beings more like warlords, carving out small territories where they play with the mortals like toys? I can honestly see an argument for both. Star Trek doesn't give us a definitive answer, but it does give us evidence. We know that certain parts of the galaxy seem to belong to individual powers. An example of this is the Prophets and their chosen people. These entities, who reside in the Bajoran wormhole, do not experience time as we do. They also may have limitations in where they can go. We assume the wormhole is their home, but it's possible they require a space like it to exist. That's not to say we can't see them outside the wormhole. They can leave, but generally only for short periods. But their influence extends far beyond their home. The Prophets directly shape Bajoran civilization into a theocracy where obedience is a form of survival. Unlike the Q, who simply observe or meddle, the Prophets actively create a system where faith ensures their continued existence. Make no mistake, the Prophets are not benevolent. They are, in every way, the bad guys. They do not communicate, they control. They do not grant free will, they dictate destiny. Their guidance is not for Bajor's benefit, but their own.
The old Ferengi proverb, expand or die, is wise advice in a galaxy at war.
That's where today's sponsor, Star Trek Fleet Command, comes in. Star Trek Fleet Command is the ultimate Star Trek strategy game where you can build your fleet, forge alliances, and explore the galaxy like never before. You're not just watching the politics of the universe unfold, you're the one shaping them. From the moment you start, you'll train under legendary officers like Kirk, Spock, and Uhura as you establish your starbase, gather resources, and take on your first major battles. If you want to check it out, use my link in the description or scan the QR code to download the game for free on mobile or PC. And right now, Fleet Command is rolling out the red carpet for all new players with daily login rewards. If you log in for 7 days straight, you'll unlock Epic Romulan Captain Nero, who gives a 40% boost to your weapons. Trust me, you'll want the advantage in battle. But there's even more. 2025 marks the 30th anniversary of Star Trek Voyager, and to celebrate, Fleet Command is giving players a free unlock of Neelix, Voyager's morale officer, when you use the promo code Voyager30. Just enter the code, and he's yours. And for those of you who love deep Star Trek lore, the latest update plunges players into the shadowy world of Section 31. You'll take on covert missions, unravel hidden black market deals. With the new officers like Section 31 Georgiou, Rachel Garrett, and Zeph, you'll need strategy and deception to survive. So what are you waiting for? Use my link or scan my QR code to download Star Trek Fleet Command for free. Log in for 7 days to claim your rewards, and don't forget to use Voyager 30 to unlock Neelix. The galaxy needs a leader. Will you answer the call? In contrast, the Q Continuum seems to take a different approach. While they have interfered with other species, their fascination with humanity, and Picard in particular, is striking. Unlike the Prophets, they do not demand worship, but they do impose judgment. Q's presence in the next generation a lot of times resulted in pain, suffering, and even death for the Federation. And yet, ironically, the Federation was always better for it. They were forced to face challenges beyond their limits. They were made aware of threats that lurked in the darkness, threats they never would have been ready for. But was this a game, a test, a rivalry between Q factions? What makes the Q truly interesting is that they never outright rule over anyone. Instead, they nudge civilizations forward, testing them, pushing them, but never guiding them like the prophets do. Are the Q simply cosmic teachers, or is their interference part of something bigger? Then we have the Organians. Unlike the Q and the prophets, the Organians appear to be genuine pacifists, closer to the ideals of Starfleet itself than any other godlike race. They refuse to engage in war or interfere until absolutely necessary. Even though they could intervene at any moment, they were willing to let lesser species stumble and fall, even if it meant those species would be wiped out. But when they finally did make contact, their intervention reshaped the course of galactic history. Don't forget, they forced Federation and the Klingon Empire into a Cold War by banning direct conflict. In their view, this was a way of ensuring that both species would evolve beyond violence, and in time, they were right. But what made them finally step in? Were they watching other godlike beings manipulate events and felt obligated to correct the balance? Interestingly, not all of the beings that we see that appear godlike are so restrained. The Dowd are the best example of what happens when omnipotent entities let their emotions take control. One Dowd, in a moment of rage, erased an entire civilization, the Huznok. 50 billion lives extinguished in an instant. This is the nightmare scenario of having gods among mortals. The Q at least seem to have some rules, the Prophet have some limits, but the Dowd, they remind us that absolute power does not mean absolute wisdom. We've seen how these beings interact with mortals, some as manipulators, some as pacifists, some as destroyers. But what about the relationships with each other? Are there unspoken boundaries, unwritten rules that even they must abide by? Do they ever manipulate each other the same way they manipulate mortals? And if these gods ever did go to war, will the lesser species even know? And that's what we're about to find out after this.
Oh, the arrogance. They don't have a clue as to what's out here.
Now, let's take a look at the gods. The Q Continuum presents itself as the ultimate power in the galaxy. They observe, they judge, they manipulate, but they rarely, if ever, acknowledge other godlike beings. Why? Are they truly all-powerful, or is it because they know better than to provide another war? We often assume that the Q simply exist outside of conflict, but what if that's not the case? What if they are the last rulers standing, the only ones left enforcing the remains of a cosmic order that has long since fallen apart? This might explain why they avoid certain entities, why they recognize some threats but ignore others. They acknowledge Guinan and the Elorians, hinting that there is something about them they respect, or even fear. But they are far less interested in beings like the Prophets or Organians. One of the biggest clues to this possibility lies at the very edge of the galaxy, the Great Barrier. The Great Barrier is one of Star Trek's strangest mysteries. It exists as an energy field surrounding the galactic core and also at the outer edges of the Milky Way, appearing as an impassable phenomenon that disrupts energy and thought itself. But why is it there? Who, or what, put it there? The Q almost never discuss it, nor do the Organians, nor the Prophets, and yet, it seems to be one of the only things capable of restricting powerful entities. What if the Great Barrier isn't just a random anomaly, but a construct, something placed there by the Q, or even an older force, something designed to prevent powerful beings from entering the Milky Way?
We're explorers from another galaxy, but we had no idea that our technology would be so destructive to their atmosphere.
And that brings us to the Nasine, one of the only godlike species we know that for a fact came from the outside galaxy. Unlike the Q or the Organians, the Nasine were not native to this galaxy. They arrived from elsewhere, bringing with them technology so advanced that they accidentally rendered an entire planet uninhabitable, the homeworld of the Ocampa. But instead of fixing their mistake, or perhaps being unable to, they simply left, abandoning the destruction they caused, save for one member of their kind, the Caretaker, who remained to ensure the survival of the Ocampa people. Now put yourself in the Q's position. Imagine you are a near-immortal species watching a force from another galaxy arrive, devastate a planet, and leave without consequence. What would you do to prevent it from happening again? So the question is, was the Great Barrier created by the Q as a response to the Nasine? I know there's a novel that really speaks to it, but we won't ultimately know for now. But then again, If the Q created a containment barrier for extragalactic threats, what about the conflicts already happening within the Milky Way? What happened to the other godlike beings who once ruled?
Unless both sides agree to an immediate cessation of hostilities, all your armed forces, wherever they may be, will be immediately immobilized.
The Organians are one of the strangest cases of godlike entities in Star Trek. They weren't manipulators like the Q, nor were they conquerors. Instead, they were pacifists. At first glance, they seem like the most benevolent of these divine beings. But here's the thing. They're gone. They once enforced peace between the Federation and the Klingons, literally preventing wars by the sheer force of will. And then, suddenly, they vanished. No explanation, no real trace. Did they step aside willingly, or did another force push them into hiding? The Q never mentioned them, the prophets show no interest. The Organians seem to act independently, but what if they were enforcing a kind of truce between the remaining godlike entities? We often see the Organians as peacekeepers for the Federation and the Klingons, but what if they are also peacekeepers for the gods? Maybe they watched as beings like the Q and the Dowd clashed, and they realized that the intervention among mortals was meaningless unless peace was first maintained between the gods themselves. If so, then their disappearance might not have been an act of neutrality. It might have been an act of surrender.
I am a Dowd, an immortal being of disguises and false surroundings. I have lived in this galaxy for many thousands of years, although until today no one has known my true identity.
Then, there are the Dowd, beings who possess immense power, but unlike the Q or Organians, seem to be in hiding. The only Dowd we ever met, Kevin Uxbridge, demonstrated just how dangerous they are when he wiped out 50 billion Huznuk in a single moment of rage. Maybe the Dowd were a part of a godlike order, but they were exiled for their recklessness. It is possible that only Kevin would have been exiled, but why don't we see any other Dowd? It is strange that the Q never mentioned them. If the Q claimed dominion over the universe, wouldn't they step in when a Dowd destroys an entire species? Unless, of course, the Dowd are already known to the Q and are considered too dangerous to confront directly. And that brings us to the Borg.
Magnify.
Full scan.
Go to yellow alert.
Going to yellow alert.
Keep the shields down. We don't want to appear provocative.
Aye, sir.
They are one of the few major threats in Star Trek that the Q seem to actively avoid. Unlike the other cosmic powers we've discussed, the Borg aren't gods. The Borg were created as a weapon against the gods. We don't know who built the Borg, we don't know their original purpose or their creation. But what if that purpose wasn't just to assimilate civilizations, but to counter the influence of godlike beings? A failsafe designed by an unknown force meant to consume and neutralize the divine. The Borg operate with little to no emotion, no hesitation, just relentless assimilation. What if they were engineered to combat omnipotent beings by absorbing their knowledge and counteracting their powers? And if that's the case, then the Elorians may have been one of their first victims.
They don't have a clue as to what's out here.
But they will learn. Adapt. That is their greatest advantage.
What if the Elorians were once gods, but they lost their power? The Q openly acknowledge Guinan, treating her with caution, even fear. Why? The Elorians do not have some obvious divine abilities, but what if they once did? Did the Q know them from a past war? Did they once share power? Were the Elorians on the losing side of the last great divine conflict? If so, then the Borg may have been the final nail in the coffin, the force that ended their godhood permanently. Every time a godlike being interferes with mortals, something is left behind. A scar, a consequence. Sometimes entire civilizations are reshaped. Other times, they're simply erased. And no matter how powerful these entities are, one thing is nearly universal. They rarely take responsibility. The question isn't just what gods do to each other, it's what they leave behind when they move on. The prophets may be the most revered, godlike entities in Star Trek, especially by the Bajoran people. They reside in the Celestial Temple, untethered by linear time. To Bajor, they are gods. To the prophets, Bajor may just be a part of their design. The Bajorans built a religion around them, reshaped their culture, their politics, even their identity. They listened to voices from the wormhole and followed visions that may or may not have been meant for them. Sisko, the emissary, or Space Jesus in the Greek, was chosen. But was he chosen for Bajor's sake, or for theirs? The prophets never explain, they only act. When Sisko questions them, he gets cryptic responses, or silence. Were the prophets guiding Bajor, or were they molding it into a tool? Then there's the Q. Unlike the prophets, they don't seek worship. They seek curiosity, challenge, entertainment. From the very beginning, Q puts humanity on trial, not just metaphorically, but literally. The crew of the Enterprise is judged as a species unworthy of existence, and to teach them a lesson, Q sends them to encounter the Borg. Very, very early. 18 crew members die in that encounter. A lesson, Q says. A necessity. But how many more will die in the future as a result of that premature contact? Every interaction with the Q costs someone something. Lives, time, sanity. And yet, Q seems unconcerned. He claims to admire humanity, but that admiration comes with pain. Is Q humanity's greatest cosmic teacher, or its most dangerous manipulator? We only met one doubt, Kevin Uxbridge, a being of incredible power who chose to live among mortals until the day he couldn't. When his wife was killed in an attack, he retaliated, not against the attackers, but against the entire species. 50 billion Husnik, erased from existence, wiped out in a moment of grief. There was no judgment from the Q, no intervention from the Organians, just silence. If the gods watch one another, they clearly don't act when the cost is paid by mortals. The Organians are remembered as peacekeepers, beings who stopped a war before it could begin, forcing the Klingons and the Federation into a Cold War instead. It worked, but did it work because peace was earned, or because it was imposed? What if peace was never the goal? What if the Organians only wanted to stop another divine war from spilling into the mortal world? Their intervention altered the path of two civilizations, not by persuasion, not through diplomacy, but through divine force. It raises the question, did they prevent violence, or just delay it? The caretaker left behind the Okampa, a race made dependent on him for survival. When he died, their fate was uncertain. He never asked them what they wanted. He simply made decisions and moved on. The Borg leave no culture behind, only silence. The Q's trials pushed species to the brink. The Dowd's emotions wiped out billions. Even the prophets, who speak of destiny, do so with no regards for free will, especially if they want a specific child born by you. Then they just strip you of all free will and make you have sex with a man you never knew. Truly the heroes. For gods, mortality is a canvas, but for mortals, it's a battlefield. Star Trek's godlike beings are vast, mysterious, often brilliant, but whether they claim to be protectors, teachers, or neutral observers, the result is the same. The cost of their power is paid by others. They alter timelines, shape empires, destroy civilizations, and they walk away unscathed. No tribunal, no consequences, no regret. Perhaps that's the most terrifying part. Not that they're powerful, but they never have to be accountable.